March 18, 1875, President Ulysses S. Grant appointed 37-year-old Isaac Charles Parker as federal judge of the Western District of Arkansas, which included the Indian Territory of Oklahoma. The district was the most lawless territory in the nation. President Grant was determined to clean up the Indian nation by giving Judge Parker dictatorial powers. When Judge Parker's court ruled, it was final. There was no appeal, even capital punishment. He was federal judge for 21 years. During his tenure, he had 79 prisoners executed on a gallows built on courthouse grounds at Fort Smith. Judge Parker's reputation soon spread as the hanging judge. He was given authority to hire 200 U.S. deputy marshals to cover 70,000 square miles. Being a deputy marshal in Indian Territory was the most dangerous job in the U.S. government. Over 109 was killed in the line of duty. Judge Parker hired several black deputies to work under his jurisdiction. It was found that the Native Americans trusted black marshals more than whites and was willing to share information. One of the first black deputies hired by the court was Bass Reeves. Reeves became one of Judge Parker's favorite marshals. During his career, he arrested over 3,000 lawbreakers. He was in several gunfights and killed 14 men, even hunting down his own son who had committed murder and sent him to prison on the 25th of June, 1876. While Judge Parker was sentencing prisoners to be hung, and Bass Reeves was hunting down outlaws in Oklahoma Territory, up in Montana, General George Armstrong Custer was planning his attack on Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho tribes camped along the Little Bighorn River in the southern middle part of the state by the U.S. 7th Cavalry Regiment. Colonel Custer will lose his command along with his own life in one of the most devastating defeats in the history of the U.S. Cavalry. His initial mistake was splitting his command and underestimating the strength and determination of his enemy. Less than 2 months after the Battle of the Little Bighorn on 2nd of August, 1876, James Wild Bill Hickok was sitting down at a card game at the Nuttles and Mann's No. 10 Saloon in Deadwood, South Dakota Territory. Sitting at the table with Bill was Carl Mann, part owner of the saloon, Bill Massey, a steamboat captain, and a man by the name of Charles Rich. Bill had only been in Deadwood 28 days, so when he asked Charles Rich to change chairs with him, Charles refused and said, "Hell, Bill, you ain't been in town long enough, and nobody even knows you're here." It's reported that Bill had been playing the day before with a man named Jack McCall, who had lost all of his money to Bill. It's been said that Hickok gave McCall enough money to eat on and told him, "Jack, if you don't have enough money to play on, then don't play." Unnoticed, Jack McCall came in the saloon and walked behind the bar and came up behind Hickok. He said, "Damn you, take that." The bullet from Jack McCall's .45 revolver went through Hickok's head and landed in the wrist of Bill Massey sitting straight across from him. Massey would carry around the bullet for life to show people. Wild Bill dropped his cards on the table, a pair of black eights and a pair of black aces. The hand will become known as the dead man's hand, aces and eights. James Butler Wild Bill Hickok was only 39 years old. 2 years after the death of Wild Bill, we go to Texas, where the deadliest outlaw and gunfighter John Wesley Harden was captured and sentenced to 25 years in the Texas State Pen at Huntsville. He was 21 years old at the time for murdering a Texas sheriff. Harden was known to have killed at least 20 people. However, he claimed more. He had been known as a killer without reason. He once killed a man for snoring while spending time in Abilene, Kansas, where Wild Bill was the law. Harden was friendly with Bill, but when he put 2 shots through the adjacent hotel room to stop a man from snoring, killing him, he left in the middle of the night, knowing that Marshal Hickok could not afford to ignore this killing. Harden himself was murdered in 1895 while standing in an El Paso saloon by an old enemy. Harden was 42 years old. While John Wesley Harden was spending time in a Texas prison in 1878, at the same time, in Lincoln County, New Mexico, a young man by the name of William Bonney was becoming involved in the Lincoln County War. His friends began calling him the Kid because of his young age. Billy the Kid was charged with killing Lincoln County Sheriff William Brady from ambush along with other regulators. He also killed J.W. Bell and Robert Bob Olinger while attempting to escape from jail. Bill was finally killed on July the 14th, 1881, in Fort Sumner, New Mexico, by Lincoln County Sheriff Pat Garrett. 3 months after the death of Billy the Kid in New Mexico, a gunfight was brewing in Tombstone, Arizona, where Wyatt Earp, his brothers, and Doc Holliday were preparing to take on the Clantons and the McLary gangs. During the 1-minute gun battle that occurred at 3 p.m. Wednesday, October the 26th, 1881, Virgil and Morgan Earp were wounded. Doc Holliday was grazed. Tom and Frank McLary were killed, along with Billy Clanton. 5 months after the gunfight at the OK Corral in Arizona, back in Missouri, the Ford brothers, Bob and Charlie, was planning the assassination of outlaw Jesse James. With Jesse's earlier gang members either been killed or in prison, he recruited the Ford brothers to help him rob the Platte City Bank. They posed as Jesse's cousin, but was no kin. While living in St. Joseph, Missouri, Jesse posed as a Mr. Howard, and on April the 3rd, 1882, while the Fords were visiting the home of Jesse and his wife Zerelda, they was there to make plans for their next robbery. Bob seen an opportunity to kill the famous outlaw. Jesse Woodson James is estimated to have stolen $1.5 million during his outlaw career. At his death, he was almost broke, leaving Zerelda destitute, although she was made offers that would have made her rich by writing books and doing traveling shows telling about her famous husband. She turned down all offers and financially suffered the rest of her life. Jesse James was 34 years old. 4 months after Jesse James was shot and killed in St. Joseph, Missouri, Plantley Roy Bean Jr. was appointed Justice of the Peace of Valverde County, Texas on August 2, 1882. Texas Rangers complained that they had to transport prisoners too far to get to a court of law and recommended that saloon keeper Roy Bean be appointed Justice of the Peace. He described himself as the only law west of the Pecos. He appointed his own deputies, had one law book, and if he couldn't find it in a book, he just made it up. He held court in his saloon, the Jersey Lily, and would stop in the middle of a trial to let the defendant buy drinks for the jury. He named the town Langtree after the actress Lily Langtree, whose picture he had seen in a magazine. In his presence, everyone was required to speak respectfully of Miss Langtree, or be fined, or even worse. At the same time that Judge Beam was holding court in Texas, Apache warrior Geronimo was raiding both sides of the Mexican border, killing Mexicans and white families alike. Geronimo broke out of the reservation several times during the 1880s. The more he broke out and rampaged, the more the U.S. military was embarrassed. At one point, the U.S. Army had 1/4 of the nation's military in the field hunting Geronimo. The last time he broke out of the San Carlos reservation with 135 Apache followers, he was 55 years old. In order to avoid capture, Geronimo would push his men, women, and children to travel as much as 70 miles per day. On September 4th, 1886, Geronimo and his small band turned themselves in to General Nelson Miles at Skeleton Canyon, Arizona. They'll be sent to prison in Florida. But despite General Miles's promise to him, he was never allowed to return to Arizona. While Geronimo was incarcerated at Fort Pickens, Florida, Robert Leroy Parker was in Colorado contemplating his first bank robbery. Butch Cassidy and 3 friends robbed the San Miguel Valley Bank on July the 24th, 1889 at Telluride, Colorado. Butch was recognized while on his way out of town. It was too late to ever go straight after being spotted. Butch Cassidy and the Wild Bunch was one of the most successful bank and train robbers of the Old West. Butch was successful because he planned every move, such as stationing fresh horses along the escape route. He's estimated to have stolen what would be valued today at $10 million without ever killing one person. 5 months before Butch Cassidy robbed his first bank in Colorado, in Oklahoma, Myra Maybelle Shirley, Belle Starr, was assassinated on February the 3rd, 1889 by an unknown assassin. Belle was riding her favorite horse, Venus, home from a visit to their neighbors. Because Belle had made several enemies during her lifetime of crime, mostly harboring criminals and selling stolen horses. Her killer was never identified. She was ambushed within a quarter of a mile from her home after she was shot in the back with a shotgun and fell off her horse. The killer walked up and shot her again to make sure that she was dead. Belle Starr was 40 years old. When the funeral of Belle Starr was taking place in Oklahoma, Thomas Edward Blackjack Ketchum was working as a cowboy in the Pecos River Valley in New Mexico. Tired of working as a cowboy, Blackjack, his older brother Sam, and others were named as the robbers of the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad, outside of Deming, New Mexico territory. It was carrying a large payroll of $20,000. The gang went on robbing and killing for the next 8 years. Their luck ran out after making a successful train robbery north of Deming, New Mexico, and scoring a good haul. They did so well the first time, they decided to do it again by robbing the same train in the same place. The posse was notified quickly and was on the trail, where Sam and others were tracked down and killed. Unknown by Blackjack, the gang had robbed the train without him the second time. Not knowing, he decided to rob the same train by himself. Needless to say, it went bad. Blackjack was shot in the arm, and later it had to be amputated to prevent gangrene. He was taken to Clayton, New Mexico, and was the only person hung in Union County. He was also the only person ever hung for felonious assault upon a railroad in New Mexico. He was 37 years old. Later, the law was found to be unconstitutional, but it was too late for Blackjack. In 1901, when Blackjack Ketchum was being hung in New Mexico, in Wyoming, cowboy, Army Scout, and Pinkerton agent Tom Horn was being hired by the Wyoming Cattle Association to stop cattle rustling. In reality, the large ranchers was using cattle rustling as an excuse to get rid of the smaller ranchers. Tom was charging the association $500 to $600 for every rustler he killed. Tom once said, "Killing men is my specialty." He had been fired from the Pinkerton agency for tracking down and killing too many men. They were afraid it would reflect on the reputation of the agency. Tom's downfall was killing William Nichols, the 14-year-old son of a sheep rancher near Iron Mountain, Wyoming. The killing was mistaken identity. He thought he was shooting Mr. Nichols. Everyone knew that Tom was guilty, or thought he was, couldn't prove it. So lawman Joe LaFleur contrived a plan to entrap Horn. LaFleur brought Tom to his office, offered him whiskey and a job in Montana killing cattle rustlers. He had stationed a court reporter and a respected witness in the room next door listening. Soon Tom was bragging about the killing. He was arrested and tried. Tom's defense was that he was only bragging. He was well known for his wild tales of his exploits. However, the jury was in no mood to hear witnesses offered by Tom's defense that Mr. Nichols was actually feuding with his neighbor, Jim Miller. Whether Horn was guilty or not of the murder of William Nichols, he was guilty of 17 other murders. Tom Horn was hung on November the 20th, 1903, at the Cheyenne, Wyoming jail. He was 42 years old.